You're making a mistake. You're marrying a waiter, Lauren. A waiter. Vanessa's voice echoed through the church like a gunshot. The entire room froze. I stood there in my wedding dress, bouquet trembling in my hands, staring at my sister as she pointed at Ethan, who was standing beside the altar with the kind of stillness that only comes from a lifetime of holding in storms. My parents shifted uncomfortably in their seats. A few relatives whispered. Others avoided eye contact altogether. It was the moment most brides dream of. The aisle, the vows, the kiss. Instead, I got my sister standing up in front of 130 guests, calling me pathetic for marrying the man I loved. My name is Lauren Bennett, and that moment, my sister publicly trying to shatter my wedding, should have broken me. But it didn't. I had spent 30 years being compared to Vanessa. She was always the center of attention. The pretty one. The polished one. The success story. Married to a startup CEO, always in stilettos, always networking. Me. A public school counselor with scuffed heels and a heart too soft for my own good. When I met Ethan, he was waiting tables at a quiet little cafe near my school. He wore second-hand jeans, quoted poetry while pouring coffee, and remembered how I took my tea after one visit. Vanessa rolled her eyes the first time I mentioned him. A guy who waits tables? Really, Lauren? You have a master's degree. She didn't see what I saw. He didn't want to. She never asked about his heart. Just his paycheck. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Ethan had a reason for wearing that apron. He wasn't just serving espresso. He was studying people. Watching systems. Learning every part of a world he already owned. But no one saw it because he didn't want them to. Ethan was the heir to a multi-billion-dollar hospitality empire. But at that moment, to everyone in that room, including my sister, he was just some guy who brought the breadsticks. And that's exactly how we planned it. So, what really happened after Vanessa tried to ruin my wedding? Well, it didn't just change my wedding day. It changed everything. Let me tell you how it all unfolded. Before I begin, I just want to say thank you. Truly. For being here, for listening, for giving your time to this story. Whether you stumbled upon it by accident or came here on purpose, your presence means more than you know. If you've ever felt misunderstood, judged, or underestimated, I hope this story finds you. So grab a seat, take a breath, and lean in. Because what you're about to hear might just stay with you. Let's begin. Vanessa and I were never close, not really. We were born just 2 years apart, but it felt like we were raised on different planets. She was the daughter our parents dreamed about. Tall, blonde, naturally magnetic. A straight student who never failed to remind people of it. I was the quiet one. The sweet one. I read books under blankets at family parties and stayed up late helping mom clean while Vanessa posted selfies with her homecoming crown. She got the compliments, I got the comparisons. When Vanessa got into Stanford, the house was filled with balloons, cake, and congratulations. When I got accepted to a state university with a partial scholarship, my dad handed me a polite nod and said, "That's good, honey." I learned early that in our house, ambition wasn't enough unless it came with prestige. And my sister had prestige wrapped around her like perfume. It clung to her. And it stuck to everything she touched. After college, I didn't chase status. I chased meaning. I became a school counselor at a public middle school in East Austin. Hardly glamorous but honest work. I came home tired most nights but with full lungs and a full heart. It was during one of those evenings after a late parent-teacher conference that I stumbled into Paloma's cafe. That's where I met Ethan. He was behind the counter, sleeves rolled up, wiping down a milk-steamed espresso machine like it was made of glass. He smiled like he had nowhere else to be, and the first thing he said to me wasn't, "Can I take your order?" but, "Long day." There was something rare about him. Gentle but sharp. Grounded but curious. We started talking, then walking, then watching terrible Netflix movies on my couch with our feet tangled together and popcorn in our laps. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't rich. But he made me feel seen in a way I hadn't known I needed. Vanessa, of course, was appalled. "You're really dating a waiter?" she asked, blinking like she'd heard me wrong. "Lauren, you're 30. You're educated. You should be building a future, not babysitting someone else's minimum wage phase." To her, everything had a value tag. Marriages were mergers. Friendships were alliances. Her husband, Troy, had IPO'd his third tech startup by the time they were married. Their engagement party had a DJ flown in from New York and a chocolate fountain that probably cost more than my car. She posted photos of his Tesla and his sky-high office view on Instagram with captions like, "Hustle is sexy." She never once asked me if Ethan made me happy. She didn't know that Ethan had his own secrets, bigger than she could have imagined. He wasn't waiting tables because he lacked ambition. He was doing it because he wanted to understand life from the ground up. His family, the Blakes, owned a hospitality empire. Restaurants, hotels, luxury resorts across the country. Ethan had grown up in a Manhattan penthouse, attended boarding schools in Europe, and spent summers in private villas most people only saw on magazine covers. But instead of letting all that define him, he ran from it. Not in bitterness but in purpose. "If I'm going to inherit it someday," he told me, "I need to understand every layer. The people, the work, the heartbeat." So he built a plan, 10 years working undercover. No one knew who he really was. He used his mother's maiden name, didn't take handouts, and never once pulled rank. He'd washed dishes in Cleveland, bartended in Atlanta, flipped omelets in Portland, and now served coffee in Austin. The man my sister mocked for bringing me lattes had trained with Michelin-starred chefs, reviewed staffing models for hotel branches in 6 cities, and managed more back-end systems than Troy could spell. But Ethan didn't want people to treat him like royalty. He wanted to earn his place brick by brick. When we got serious, we talked about telling my family, about unveiling the truth. But in the end, it was Ethan who paused me one night, resting his hand over mine. "Let's wait. Not out of fear, but to see who's real. Who shows up for us without needing the resume first." It was one of the most Ethan things he'd ever said. So we kept the secret. Let them whisper. Let Vanessa judge. Let the world underestimate him. We knew what was coming. And we knew she wouldn't see it coming at all. The chapel was quiet, bathed in warm golden light. Candles flickered in antique holders, and soft strings played in the background as I stood at the end of the aisle, arm in arm with my father. My veil floated slightly with the breeze as the old doors shut behind us. Every seat was filled. Friends, coworkers, relatives, and more than a few people I knew were only there to judge. But none of it mattered. My eyes were locked on Ethan. He stood at the altar, wearing a perfectly tailored navy suit, his dark hair neatly styled, a calm expression on his face. He looked like a man who had nothing to prove and everything to give. His hands were folded in front of him, but when our eyes met, he gave me the smallest smile. A promise in the middle of chaos. One that only I seemed to notice. I took my first step forward and the world felt steady. But something felt off. As I got closer to the front, I noticed Vanessa, sitting in the second pew, legs crossed, perfectly put together, eyes sharp. He was watching Ethan, not me. Not with admiration. Not even with distaste. With something colder. Calculated. The ceremony continued. The priest welcomed our guests, spoke of love, growth, and partnership. Ethan and I held hands, and for a moment I thought maybe, just maybe, Vanessa would keep her bitterness buried for one day. Then came the moment. If there is anyone here who has reason why these two should not be joined in marriage, speak now or forever hold your peace. A long pause followed, until I heard the scrape of heels on the floor. Vanessa stood. Gasps whispered through the church like wind. "I can't let this happen," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Lauren, you are better than this." The priest froze. Ethan didn't flinch. I, on the other hand, could barely breathe. "You're marrying a guy who serves tables for a living," Vanessa continued, her voice dripping with disdain. "A guy who pours coffee and probably still lives in a studio apartment with peeling linoleum floors. Have you lost your mind?" Someone behind me whispered, "Oh my God." My aunt buried her face in her hands. Ethan's best man tensed, like he wasn't sure if this was a joke. "You went to college. You had dreams. And now you're throwing it all away on a waiter," she added, stepping closer to the aisle. "It's pathetic." I opened my mouth, but no words came out. "I tried to be supportive," she lied. "But this is a disaster waiting to happen. And when it all crashes down, don't say I didn't warn you." Silence. All eyes were on us. Then Ethan slowly turned his head toward me and gave the faintest smirk. "Should we tell her?" he whispered, just loud enough for me to hear. I squeezed his hand. "Not yet," I said. "Because this was just the beginning." I didn't look at Vanessa again. I couldn't. Instead, I turned my eyes toward my parents. My mom sat perfectly still, hands folded in her lap like she was watching a stranger's wedding. My dad blinked slowly, lips pressed into a thin line, offering no hint of outrage. No defense. Not even a whisper of disapproval for what Vanessa had just done. They were silent. Just like always. And that hurt more than her words. I felt heat rising in my cheeks, not from shame but from fury. But I swallowed it down. I wasn't about to cry. Not here. Not for them. I turned my gaze to Ethan. He was still holding my hand firm and steady. The one person in this room who never needed convincing. The priest cleared his throat. The silence behind us was thick. No one moved. No one breathed. It was like the entire church was caught between disbelief and second-hand embarrassment. "Shall we continue?" the priest finally asked, his voice careful, as though even he didn't want to be in this moment. Pause. I turned fully to Ethan. His eyes didn't waver. "Yes," I said. My voice didn't shake. "Let's continue." And just like that, the spell broke. Chairs creaked. Guests shifted uncomfortably. Vanessa turned sharply on her heel and stormed out, heels echoing off the floor like punctuation marks. The chapel doors slammed shut behind her. I exhaled. The rest of the ceremony felt like breathing after drowning. I spoke my vows clearly. Ethan slid the ring onto my finger with hands that never trembled. We kissed. And the room erupted in polite, almost apologetic applause. But my mind wasn't on the ceremony anymore. Because while Vanessa thought she had delivered the final word, she had no idea what was waiting for her on the other side of this day. She didn't know about the reception venue. She didn't know who Ethan really was. And she definitely didn't know what it would feel like to be on the wrong side of a truth that would leave her speechless. We weren't angry. We were ready. Outside, the air had turned crisp. The late afternoon sun spilled golden light over the courtyard as sleek black cars began pulling up to the reception venue, the Archer. It was a landmark. Modern, glass-wrapped, impossible to book unless you had a 10-figure net worth or your last name belonged on a building downtown. The valet line curled around the block. Guests murmured as they stepped out, eyes widening at the fountains, the uniformed doormen, the flicker of chandeliers visible through 40-foot windows. Inside, the staff moved like clockwork. White gloves, silver trays, Dom Perignon chilled to perfection. The scent of truffle oil and rosemary clung to the air. And still no one had quite put it together. Yet, Ethan and I arrived quietly, ushered in through the private side entrance. He adjusted his cufflinks with practiced ease, then kissed the back of my hand. "Act 2, he said with a smile. Vanessa arrived 20 minutes later. She made an entrance, of course. Hair perfect, lips red, her husband Troy beside her looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. She stepped through the arched glass doors, expecting to find folding chairs and a buffet line. Instead, her heels stopped short on imported marble. Her eyes swept the space, ceiling to floor murals, floral arrangements flown in from Florence, hand-carved ice sculptures. A quartet played in the far corner. Someone handed her a champagne flute before she even spoke. She blinked, mouth slightly parted. "Wait." She turned to Troy, whispering something quickly, already pulling out her phone to check the location. Guests turned. Cameras clicked. Whispers spread. "They booked the Archer? That's impossible. They must have a connection. How did Lauren afford this?" Then, from the far end of the hall, a silver-haired man in a midnight suit stepped forward. Regal. Sharp-eyed. Familiar to anyone in the hospitality world. William Blake. Founder of Blake Hospitality Group. He stopped in front of us, smiling like a man who'd waited years for this moment. "There you are," he said, voice warm. "My grandson. Finally married." He embraced Ethan like family because he was. Then he turned to me. "And you must be Lauren. I've heard so much about you. Welcome to the family." A ripple moved through the crowd. Someone dropped a glass. Vanessa stood frozen, her expression stuck between confusion and horror. "Grandson," she echoed faintly. William turned his gaze to her, recognizing her from the ceremony. "Ah, you must be the sister," he said calmly. "The one who called my grandson a... what was it? A waiter." Her face drained of color. She'd spent the past 2 years mocking a man who held the keys to a global empire. And she had just done it, in front of everyone. William turned toward me and gently placed both hands on my shoulders. His expression softened. "Lauren, I want you to know, Ethan's grandmother would have adored you." He told us everything. The work you do, the way you see people. You're exactly the kind of woman I prayed he'd find. He kissed my cheek, then looked back at Ethan with pride. She chose right, son. All around us, conversation faltered. Guests who'd once believed Ethan was just a waiter were now putting the pieces together. The grand venue. The flawless execution. The quiet confidence. A murmur started to grow. Wait. Blake. Blake. That's his grandson? A champagne glass slipped from someone's hand and shattered on the floor. No one even blinked. All eyes were either on Ethan or slowly turning toward Vanessa, who stood statue still, jaw tight, cheeks pale. And then Ethan stepped forward and nodded to the event manager, who lowered the lights. A massive screen flickered on behind us. Some of you know me as Ethan, the guy who once brought you coffee. His voice began over the speakers. Some of you didn't bother to know me at all. The video showed clips, grainy cell phone footage of Ethan in a kitchen flipping omelets, scrubbing a grill, delivering room service. Then, boardroom meetings, international travel, site inspections, all under the radar. His voice continued. My family owns Blake Hospitality Group. But I've spent the last 10 years learning what it means to build something, not from a penthouse but from the floor up. I've been a dishwasher, a busboy, a barbecue, a line cook. I've lived in one-bedroom rentals, worn hand-me-downs and taken night shifts by choice. Because I needed to know this world before I ever dared to lead in it. The screen flashed to a black-and-white photo of William and Ethan, side by side in front of a new resort. When I met Lauren, she didn't care about the money. She didn't ask about the legacy. She loved me when she thought I had nothing. That's why I kept it quiet. Because I didn't want to be surrounded by people who only show up when the numbers look good. The video ended with a simple line. Real love doesn't come with conditions. And real people reveal themselves, eventually. Lights rose. Silence hung in the room like mist. Vanessa opened her mouth, then closed it. She looked around, eyes darting from face to face. Some were watching her. Others were actively avoiding her gaze. Troy stepped slightly away from her. She let out a sound, not quite a breath, not quite a sob, and stumbled backward until her heels hit the wall. She whispered to no one, I didn't know. And that was the problem. He never wanted to. The days after the wedding were tense. Vanessa did what she always did when cornered. She spun the narrative. She told anyone who would listen that we had ambushed her, that the whole thing was a manipulative stunt. She floated rumors at brunches, tried to play the victim, claimed she'd been blindsided by elitist theatrics. But the whispers didn't catch the way she hoped. People had seen the video. They remembered her standing up in that chapel, calling her own sister pathetic. And now for the first time no one was clapping for her. Ethan and I, meanwhile, went back to our small apartment in East Austin. No press release. No flashy Instagram posts. We didn't need to say anything. We returned to our routines. Him reviewing staff reports in sweatpants, me grading papers at the kitchen table. The world finally quieted. It felt good. But the silence didn't last. 3 months after the wedding, the news broke. Troy, Vanessa's golden boy husband, had been arrested by federal investigators. Fraud. Insider trading. Shell companies. Years of cooking the books behind his tech firm's glossy exterior. They raided his office, froze their accounts and seized their home in Highland Park. Vanessa, once the queen of curated dinner parties and designer handbags, suddenly had her name on court filings and her face blurred out in news stories. I found out the same way everyone else did. Push notifications lighting up my phone while I was eating lunch in the teacher's lounge. I didn't text her. I didn't need to. By the time the dust settled, Troy was facing real prison time. Their assets were locked. Her Range Rover repossessed. Credit cards declined. She went from throwing $200 brunches to rationing groceries. The woman who once rolled her eyes at my thrift store shoes now had to sell her own online just to stay afloat. And still, she didn't reach out. Not yet. Because pride, as I'd learned, dies slow. The facade didn't crack all at once. It crumbled in stages. First, the social media silence. Then the disappearance from events. Finally, the rumors. Vanessa was couch-surfing between friends, living out of suitcases filled with once gilded remnants of her old life. She sold jewelry, consigned handbags, even listed her wedding dress online. People stopped returning her calls, not out of cruelty, but because they saw her for what she never let herself be before: human. By December she was invisible. Until the night she wasn't. It was just after 10 p.m. when the knock came. Soft. Hesitant. I opened the door to find her standing there in a hooded sweatshirt, mascara smudged, hair pinned back like she hadn't washed it in days. "I didn't know where else to go," she whispered. Her voice was raw. No arrogance. No rehearsed line. Just a woman who'd run out of exits. I stepped aside. She stood in the center of our modest living room like a ghost. "They're taking everything," she said, not looking at me. "The house." Her. Troy's facing sentencing. "I'm broke, Lauren. I can't breathe." I sat across from her and let the silence settle before I answered. "There's a spare apartment above one of Ethan's restaurants," I said. "It's not fancy, but it's clean. And quiet. You can stay there." She blinked. Processing. "Why would you do that? After everything?" I looked her in the eye. "Because I know what it's like to need help and not want to ask. But there's one condition." "Anything," she whispered. "I'll do anything." "You work in the restaurant." "Starting from the bottom. Just like Ethan did." Her lips parted in protest, habit, reflex, but nothing came out. She nodded. Fully. Then again, like she was convincing herself. "Okay," she whispered, voice cracking. "I'll do it." And just like that, the sister who once mocked the service industry took her first step into it. Not with grace, but with a kind of broken honesty I'd never seen on her before. The apartment was small. Just a bed, a compact kitchenette, and a narrow window that looked out over the alley behind the restaurant. The stairs creaked, the radiator hissed, and the walls carried sound like tissue paper. But it was safe. Warm. Hers. Vanessa didn't complain. Not once. She just unpacked what was left of her life into 2 dresser drawers and hung the last of her blouses next to her polyester server uniform. The first week nearly broke her. She dropped 3 plates on her second shift. One shattered mid-lunch rush, splattering aioli across a customer's sleeve. She burned the tip of her thumb on the flat-top grill. Her feet ached. Her back ached. She cried in the walk-in fridge when a customer snapped at her for forgetting lemons. She apologized to no one, but I could tell. It was the first time she'd ever been invisible, and she didn't know how to live in that silence. He hated the uniform. Hated the grease in her hair. Hated the way people looked right through her like she was part of the furniture. But she kept showing up. Day after day. And slowly something shifted. She started staying after her shifts, helping close down without being asked. She wiped tables like she meant it. She learned names. Of coworkers, of regulars, of the dishwasher whose English was broken but who taught her how to wrap silverware faster than anyone else. One night she brought in a homemade batch of chili for the staff meal. No one said anything, but I saw the look on her face when it disappeared in 10 minutes. That was the first time I saw her smile in weeks. She no longer rolled her eyes when customers asked for extra ranch. She no longer corrected people when they assumed she was just the server. And she stopped ducking when delivery guys called her by name. She stood a little straighter. He tipped bigger when we ate out. And when a man in a suit snapped at the new hostess, Vanessa stepped in before anyone else could. "You don't talk to her like that," she said. "Calm. Direct. No heat, no ego, just clarity." For the first time in her life, Vanessa wasn't aiming for status. She was building something better. She was earning respect. By month 4 she wasn't just one of the servers, she was part of the team. When tips ran short on a rainy Thursday, she covered for a new girl who'd forgotten her lunch. When someone spilled soup all over their uniform, she lent her backup apron. And when a drunk customer made a crude remark to one of the busboys, Vanessa didn't flinch. "We don't talk to people like that here," she said, standing in front of him with her arms crossed. The manager comped the meal. Vanessa never broke eye contact. Her coworkers noticed. They didn't shower her with praise. They just started saving her a seat in the break room. They greeted her with real smiles. They trusted her. And I saw something in her I'd never seen before. Not pride. Not performance. Just presence. She was finally becoming someone worth knowing. Not for who she used to be, but for who she was becoming. 6 months in, Ethan and I stopped by after the lunch rush. She was tying up her apron in the back, hair pulled into a messy ponytail, no makeup, hands stained faintly with balsamic. She looked tired. But content. You two look like you're here to inspect me, she said, smirking. Nope, I said, handing her a takeout box. Just thought you might want dinner you didn't have to cook. She took it, sat down, and exhaled slowly. I didn't know how hard this was, she said. What it takes. Every shift feels like 1,000 moving parts. Every customer is a wild card. Ethan leaned against the counter. Now you know why I started here, he said. The industry doesn't just teach you how to serve, it teaches you how to see people. She nodded. For once she didn't argue. She just sat there, quietly chewing, looking more herself than she had in years. And that's when Ethan pulled out the envelope. Inside was a letter. A promotion. Manager. The current one was transferring to Chicago to open a new location. It's yours if you want it, he said. You've earned it. Vanessa stared at the paper. Her mouth parted. But no words came. Then quietly she whispered. Are you sure? We are, I said. This place wouldn't run the same without you. The following week Ethan and I stopped by the restaurant late in the afternoon. The dining room buzzed with energy. Servers moving swiftly, customers laughing softly beneath the low amber lighting. Vanessa stood at the host stand, clipboard in hand, checking a delivery list while answering a phone call and nodding to a line cook with perfect timing. She moved like someone who belonged. No high heels. No diamonds. Just black non-slip shoes and confidence. From across the room she caught my eye and smiled. A real smile. Not the kind she used to flash for cameras or fundraisers, but something smaller and far more sincere. She didn't wave. She didn't break stride. She just nodded once, steady, grounded, whole. I found myself smiling back. She once tried to destroy our wedding. She once called the man I love pathetic. And I used to think that moment would define us forever. But now, watching her manage this space with grace and grit, I saw something different. I saw what happens when someone chooses to grow instead of retreat. I saw the version of Vanessa no one ever expected, least of all herself. Not the queen of status, not the cautionary tale, but a woman rebuilding her life one shift at a time. No shortcuts. No special treatment. Just sweat, humility, and the slow, steady earning of trust. It was enough to silence the bitterness still hiding in the corners of my memory. Months later we hosted a small family dinner at Ethan's grandmother's old estate. Nothing extravagant, just food and warmth and a fireplace flickering in the background. Everyone was invited. Vanessa arrived last, walking up the steps in her work uniform. No excuses. No apologies. No mask. She greeted our parents with a polite nod, then made her way toward me. I stood at the kitchen island arranging charcuterie. She stopped beside me, picked up a piece of manchego and said, "You always did make the best cheese boards." I glanced over. Her tone wasn't snarky. It wasn't competitive. Just simple. Grateful. "And you always did think you were too good to eat one." We both laughed, genuinely. She bumped my shoulder lightly. "Thanks. For everything." I didn't say "you're welcome." I didn't need to. Because some things, real things, are better left unsaid. Later that night I watched from across the room as she helped my mom clear dishes without being asked. As she gave my dad a quick hug on her way out. As she lingered in the doorway, hand on the knob like she didn't want to leave just yet. We didn't take a photo. We didn't post it online. But I knew. Something had shifted. In the weeks that followed, life went on. Vanessa started mentoring a few of the younger servers. She bought a beat-up little car with cash and never complained about the lack of leather seats. She showed up to work on time, stayed late, and even started taking night classes. Something in hospitality management. When a hostess asked her if she ever missed her old life, Vanessa paused, smiled softly and said, "I think I'm finally living my real one." Sometimes I think about how close I came to letting Vanessa's voice shape my life. How easily I could have let her words cut deeper than they did. She tried to humiliate me on the most important day of my life. And for a moment it worked. But Ethan didn't flinch. And neither did I. Not really. Because what she saw as weakness was never weakness at all. She didn't know who he really was. And maybe, she didn't know who I really was either. We could have closed the door on her forever. We could have left her to sink in the mess she helped create. But revenge, true revenge, isn't about making someone hurt. It's about letting someone see. Sometimes the greatest revenge is giving someone the chance to rebuild the very thing they tried to break in you. Vanessa didn't just survive her fall from grace. She transformed. And I got to witness that. Some betrayals break you. Others build you. Some people push you down, only to make you rise higher than they ever imagined. That's what this story taught me. That pain can grow roots. That pride can burn off. And that people, even the ones who hurt you, are capable of more than you think once the noise is stripped away. Not everyone will get a second chance. Not everyone will take it when it's offered. But sometimes they do. And that makes all the difference. Maybe you've been in a moment like that. Maybe you've been called less than. Maybe someone told you your choices weren't good enough. Your partner wasn't impressive enough. Your life wasn't big or shiny or fast enough. And maybe you believed it. For a while. But then something inside you refused to stay quiet. Something pushed back. And that quiet voice whispered, "You are enough. Just as you are." Because we don't owe anyone an explanation for choosing love over labels, purpose over performance, truth over appearances. And no one, not a sibling, a parent, a partner, or a stranger, has the right to define your worth. You define it. You earn it. You live it. And one day when the people who once looked down on you finally look up, you won't need to say a word. So here's what I want to ask you, just between us. Have you ever been judged unfairly, only to prove them wrong? What did they say? What did you do? And what did you learn from it? Because I promise, your story matters. More than their opinion ever did. You're not here to live by someone else's scoreboard. You're here to live fully. Honestly. With grit and grace. You're here to grow, to rise, to become. Even when they try to keep you small. Especially then. So the next time someone tells you you're not enough, remember this. The girl they called pathetic became a woman they couldn't ignore. And the man they underestimated became the one they learned to respect. And the sister who once looked down, learned to stand tall the hard way. And if she can change, so can you. So can anyone. Not for them, but for yourself. Because that's where real power lives.